Arab countries have lashed out at war criminal and bloodthirsty terrorist Benjamin Netanyahu for suggesting that Palestinians should be forcibly displaced out of their native land and resettled in Saudi Arabia. This war criminal, wanted by the International Criminal Court, told a TV channel in his settler colony built on stolen land that the Saudis can create a Palestinian state in Saudi Arabia. They have a lot of land over there.
דובר על סעודיה. הנשיא אמר להבנתי אתמול שהסעודים, איך נגדיר את זה, לא דורשים מדינה פלסטינית. מיד לאחר מכן יצאה הודעה של הסעודים שבעצם מכחישה את העניין ואומרים שאין התקדמות בלי מדינה סעודית. ואני שואל אותך...
מדינה פלסטינית.
מדינה פלסטינית.
אלא אם כן אתה רוצה שהמדינה הפלסטינית תהיה בסעודיה. יש להם הרבה שטח.
האמת שאני לא שולל את העניין הזה.
הרבה מאוד שטח.
Since Israel is a rogue settler colony, you expect those working in its TV channels to also behave nothing less than how a thug would behave. So this interviewer expectedly replied in a thuggish manner, stating that this idea was worth exploring. This interview would remind you of how most BBC representatives these days interview their guests on the Gaza conflict, which has truly blurred the line between what used to be viewed as sane media outlets and those notorious for peddling propaganda. Now there is no difference. Arab countries, including Qatar, Jordan, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Iraq, reacted swiftly as they unanimously condemned war criminal Netanyahu for his latest genocidal idea. Six-Nation Gulf Cooperation Council Secretary General Jasser Mohammad al-Budaiwi said, and I quote, "These dangerous and irresponsible statements confirm the approach of the Israeli occupation forces in their disrespect for international and UN laws and treaties and the sovereignty of states." End quote. Just see the audacity of this rogue settler colony and its terrorist ruler. This war criminal had just murdered more than 61,000 innocent people. And this is a very conservative figure. The real number of those slaughtered by Israeli savages could easily exceed 200,000. He then gets invited by another rogue head of the state in the US called Donald Trump. And two convicted criminals jointly announced the ethnic cleansing of more than 2 million people from their native land, and there's absolutely no outcry in the so-called civilized newsrooms across the world, particularly in the West. A presenter working for rogue BBC audaciously repeats Trump's lines, amounting to crimes against humanity, as she interviewed her guest from Egypt on Saturday.
Let me ask you about what Mr. Trump has said this week, this idea of the US taking a long-term ownership position of Gaza. The US said they're prepared to look at all options, and they want the Palestinian people, more than 2 million people, to relocate into Egypt, into Jordan, while the US rebuilds Gaza. The plans aren't clear yet. That's roughly what's being talked about. Do you think Egypt would be prepared to take large numbers of Palestinian people while Gaza is rebuilt? Is that a viable option?
First of all, madam, the people who would rebuild Gaza are the Palestinians themselves. This is the first thing.
Is that possible when so much of the territory has been decimated? Is it possible to rebuild this, 26-mile-long territory while people are still living in it, when there is so much to clear and there are so many dangerous ammunitions and other materials around?
And this woman is still in her job, even though she draws her salary from the funding of British taxpayers, many of whom would have been truly horrified by her action. This is the true face of the rogue and racist West. Now you know what made war criminal Netanyahu so emboldened that he even suggested forcibly relocating 2 million Palestinians from their native land to another sovereign country with whom he wants to normalize relations. Can you imagine the outrage if an Arab ruler had suggested relocating Israel's Jewish population to, let's say, Germany or the US? But we now know that the racist and bigoted West has two sets of rules, one for the whites and another for non-whites. Anyway, the Saudi Foreign Ministry had just reacted as it issued a strongly worded statement denouncing war criminal Netanyahu's latest plan on the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. The statement by the Saudi Foreign Ministry read, and I quote, "In this context, the kingdom stresses its categorical rejection to such statements that aim to divert attention from the continuous crimes committed by the Israeli occupation against the Palestinian brothers in Gaza, including the ethnic cleansing they are subjected to." The kingdom also points out that this extremist occupying mentality does not understand what the Palestinian land means to the brotherly people of Palestine and the emotional, historical, and legal connection to this land. And it does not think that the Palestinian people deserve to live in the first place, as it has completely destroyed the Gaza Strip, killed and injured more than 160,000, most of them children and women, without the slightest human feeling or moral responsibility. The kingdom affirms that the Palestinian people have a right to their land and they are not intruders or immigrants to it who can be expelled whenever the brutal Israeli occupation wishes. The kingdom notes that the proponents of these extremist ideas are the ones who prevented Israel from accepting peace by refusing peaceful coexistence, rejecting the peace initiatives adopted by the Arab countries, and systematically practicing injustice towards the Palestinian people for more than 75 years, with disregard to the truth, justice, law, and the values established in the United Nations Charter, including the human's right to live in dignity on his land. The kingdom reiterates that the right of the Palestinian people will remain firmly established and no one will be able to take it away from them, no matter how long it takes. The kingdom also asserts that lasting peace will not be achieved except by returning to the logic of reason and accepting the principle of peaceful coexistence through the two-state solution. End quote. Quite a powerful statement. But the most important and brutal reaction came from Yusuf bin Trad al-Sadoun, a member of the powerful Saudi Shura Council. Writing in a Saudi newspaper, al-Sadoun said, and I quote, "The Zionists and their supporters must realize well that they will not be able to lure the Saudi leadership and government into the traps of media maneuvers and false political pressures." End quote. He also told Trump to instead locate Israelis to Alaska and later to Greenland after annexing it. Ouch, that would hurt. You see, Shura Council members are appointed by the king himself. This council advises the ruler of the country. So, for a member of this council to use such words to condemn Trump and Netanyahu in this fashion is a hugely important development. I hope Saudi and other Arab countries take a bold stand this time against the US and Israel for a change. Both Trump and his terrorist friend Netanyahu have given enough indication that the Arab countries' failure to stand up against these thugs may soon pose a serious existential crisis for them. So it's not Iran or Yemen that the Saudi has to worry about. The Saudi king has to recognize the danger posed by the US and Israel and act decisively in a timely fashion. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. The details are there in the description of the video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.